All right, and away we go.
Here we go.
Good evening. We're going to bring the 2025-26 City of Molalla budget meeting to order. Please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to begin with roll call. And I'm going to start over here with Liz Klein.
Liz Klein, present. Oh, do I say committee member Liz Klein?
Yeah,
Present.
Budget Committee.
Budget committee member Liz Klein, present. Sorry, I'm the guinea pig.
Budget Committee Member Char Penny.
Councilor Bartholomew present.
Budget Committee Member Vermillion present.
Budget Committee Member Michelle Trefethen present.
Budget Committee Member Kaiser present.
Budget Committee Member Laura Kleisik, present. Budget Committee Regina Sheaves, present.
Councilor Gilmer, present.
Budget Committee Member Childress, present.
Budget Committee Member Amy Williams, present.
City Recorder Christy Teets present.
Cindy Chauran, Finance Director, present.
And Dan Huff, Budget Officer, present. Oh, I forgot you guys.
Chris Long, Chief of Police, present.
Matt Corthell, Assistant City Manager, present.
Diane Hadley, Library Director, present.
It's hard when they're behind you. Being quiet. Next, at the beginning of each Budget Committee meeting each year, we elect a chair and a vice chair. So is there a nomination to elect Budget Committee Chair?
Budget Officer Huff, I'd like to nominate Liz Klein as the Budget Committee Chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Eric Vermillion. Any discussion? All those in favor? I don't get to vote, but I was giving you a signal. Ms. Klein, you are now the Budget Committee Chair for the City of Molalla Budget Committee. We're going to move a little bit.
Thank you, everyone. So I've done this before. It's been a year, so there'll be a little grace. I'll chair. You can stay. I need my foot rest. No, I'm just kidding. I'm okay, thank you. All right. So next on our agenda is election of the vice chair of the budget committee. So would like to entertain a motion or a nomination.
I move to appoint Member Kaiser as Budget Committee Vice Chair.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor? Or discussion, sorry, discussion? I just asked that. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Christy, do I need to move?
I'm getting my own gavel.
All right, next on the agenda is to approve the consent agenda.
Madam Chair,
Actually,
I
we don't have a motion to do that. Do you want that moved and approved?
I
or-
do. My apologies.
That's okay. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Next, we have on the agenda the presentation of the budget message for the fiscal year 2025/2026. And I will hand it over to Budget Officer Huff. It's all yours.
Thank you. My budget message that I'm going to assume you all have read is on page 8 of the budget document. And rather than read that word for word, I'm not going to do that right now because I think you read it. Although I'm pretty sure that Budget Committee Member Childress would rather have me read it.
Every word.
Okay. So I'm not going to do that. The first thing I'd like to do tonight for this year is I want to thank our finance director, Cindy Chauran, sitting right here next to me, and she's going to be sitting here the entire evening, helping us go through this process for the budget document that she actually prepared, and it's an excellent document. She created a way, if you're looking at it online, if you've all looked at it online, you can go back and forth and up and down and come back to where you started, and it's actually, it's very impressive. She has a great staff under her, and I know that it's hard to do this job because she has to control, in some ways, from a financial standpoint, people like me and a couple of people sitting to my left. Diana isn't much of a problem. She manages herself. So the rest of us need some extra care. And so thank you, Cindy, for that. And I don't want to steal much of her fire because finance directors as a whole don't get much of an opportunity to get in front of people in their communities and talk about the really cool stuff they do. And so I'm going to let her do that later. But I do want to say a couple of things I'd like you all to remember as we go through this budget. The city of Molalla, for some time, has focused on core issues. Core issues are water service, sewer service, storm drainage, streets, public safety, police in our case, parks, and all those basic services that people pay for. We do a little extra things every once in a while when we're doing a core service. For example, Chief Yelkus Park that just began construction. You'll hear a little bit more about that later. We decided to build a more natural park and have that park reflect the Native American history of this area with the Molalla Indian tribe. So we do that in conjunction with a core value that we're already working on. We don't usually go out and do those separate. Those are costly things to do when there's no revenue coming in to pay for it. So we try to merge it with something else that we're already doing. That's one thing I want you all to remember, hopefully. The other thing that I think is very important for us, anyway, in most cities, in most organizations like this, is the most important thing we have, the most important asset we have is our people. And our people, in the case of the budget cycle, is yourselves, you're part of our people, the staff, and the community. If we had some here, we would include them.
We have one here.
Oh, Dave. Sorry, it's really annoying when they're behind you and you don't know they're there. So the thing I'd like to tell you about about my people, which includes Cindy and Christy and Diana and Mac and Chief Long over there, is they work hard. They try to listen really hard to what the community needs and sees and desires. And within the confines of our funding process, we try to do those things. And you're going to hopefully see some of that tonight. And the other hope I have is you would take that out to talk to people in the community that you see every day. And that's really why you're here. Finally, and this is the most important part, is this budget is balanced. Okay, that's an important thing to think about. If you look at what is on the news today, 65% of the cities in the state of Oregon are facing fairly significant, in some cases, budget deficits. This budget is balanced. We're not including any huge cuts to make it balanced. It's because it's not our money that we're managing, and we take it very seriously. And then, you're almost up, Cindy. As I stated in the conclusion of my budget message, if you want to refer to that, the very last paragraph, it's a budget committee's responsibility to approve total allocations for the 18 funds we do have. But don't take that lightly. And again, this is the city's roadmap for what we do next year, and in many cases, what we do for the next 2, 3, 4, or 5 years. It's this fiscal year and beyond is how you kind of have to look at this, and that's how we don't get ourselves in trouble. A little bit like Buzz Lightyear, but that's what it is. You will undoubtedly find detractors in our own community and outside the community of how healthy and conservative and fiscally sound the city of Molalla is. I'm sure you will. And because we hear it. Even though the folks don't have any substantive information to prove that, you're going to hear it. Especially in light of what everybody's seen all over the state. But that's not Molalla. And unless you have any questions for me about my budget message or anything I've said, that concludes my opening message. And thank you all for being here. We need you, and it's important for this community to have people who really know and care about what's going on.
All right.
Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Huff. Appreciate that. And your letter is always very interesting to read, so thank you for including a thorough overview. Cindy?
Okay.
I am going to move.
Okay. Oh, that's you.
All right. I also want to thank you for being here tonight and being part of the budget process. Finance has prepared for you a balanced budget, and it meets all Oregon budget law requirements. A lot of time was spent this year on the digital version. My goal was for this to become something that you might consider saving on your desktop and maybe reference and try to use it as like an encyclopedia of everything Molalla. Not only does this document showcase a proposed budget, but it also shows real numbers from past audited financials. Hyperlinks within the documents take you to goal setting, visioning, union contracts, master plans, the current comprehensive plans, capital projects, the YouTube channel, the Facebook page, statistics, and many programs and contracts within the city website. Page links are also synced for easy navigation as well. Another goal of mine was to put forward pictures that show Molalla is about throughout the document. Time is spent on the narratives for each fund so that when reading, you can understand what each department has been doing and what their projected goals are. And every year, I always ask for questions, and I receive some. So rather than go through the administration and the court areas, I like to just reference the questions that you guys gave me and talk about them because it kind of encompasses all of that, and I think that's better served than going through the departments. So you guys should all have this document. These are all the questions that have been submitted to me, and we can go through them together. So if you go to page 11, the first question was, please explain the 110% variance in the stormwater SDCs. Now, this is just a summary of the past budgets with the actually adopted and the proposed. So the question was for the stormwater, why was it 110% increase? So if you go to page 138, that is the actual storm SDC fund. On page 138, it shows that last year the storm SDCs was not used at all. Therefore, now that we have a project in 25-26, this leaves an increase from the following year. In reality, we saved the funds last year, so we would have enough money to budget for this year should we have an upcoming project. So that's why you see the big increase. Okay, and then the next question is on page 13. The Urban Renewal Agency, it looks like we had an incomplete sentence on the police station. So I corrected it to say, in order to ensure that Molalla Urban Renewal Agency maintains capacity to support the planned contribution of the new police station. The only identified project for fiscal 25-26 is completion of the new police station. Okay, and then on page 33, I'm only going to reference I discussed the general fund, and on the caption up there, you'll see it says fiscal year 24-25. That should say 25-26. So that's been corrected. Then on page 48, I had another question in regards to the contingencies. Please explain why some contingencies are so much higher than the recommended percentage per policy. For example, streets, sewer, and water. This was a really good question. Due to the upcoming projects in streets, water, and sewer, timing is everything, and it's difficult at that time to budget for that. If the money's in contingency, then we can go to council and then we can ask to spend it if we have a project that comes up. If we leave it in reserve, we can't access it. So it makes more sense to put in some of these funds where we know we have larger projects coming up. Should we need to use that money, I want to be able to go to council and say, can we access this? Can we start this project? So that's why, as long as I meet the minimum requirement per our policy and we leave that in the reserve, doesn't mean that we're going to spend it, because we still have to get authority to spend it, but at least we have that option. So that's why you see some of those larger percentages there. And also, after I answer any of the questions, if you have a question about it, just raise your hand. On page 61, it looks like it was another simple typo, part of the OGFOA award. I have to do a 5-year financial plan, and it looks like I got some numbers mixed up, and I didn't get my 26-27 year in there, so I updated that and fixed that. And Miss Leota found these small things, and so if you're looking at it going, how did I miss that?
I
She's a veteran.
Don't apologize.
Don't apologize. I appreciate it.
Best editor.
So the next question was on page 66, which is in the general fund resources. $10,062 in grant for the Native American Art Walk. I am not aware of any planned investment in this finished project. As you know, when we have grants and we have certain projects, part of finance's job is to sometimes carry over those balances and then make sure that they're there when we need to use them. And at the time that the budget was prepared, there is an art project for the new police facility. In fiscal 24-25, we sold the bowling lanes, and we made an additional $4,947, and we put that into the Heritage Walk Art program with the money that was already left in there, gave us a balance of the $10,062. So that's where that number came from. Like I said, if you have any questions, just stop me. On page 68, there is a reference about the activity measures from last year with performance percentage from the prior year. We have met estimates in only 1 year. Have we considered lowering our estimates so that we can more likely meet them? I'd like to see a yes in a few more cells. And I just want to remind everybody that these performance and activity measures are part of the GFOA budget award, and it's more to categorize and to show what you're doing and the activities positive. And for the administration council meetings and things like that, you know, we can guess how many we're going to have, and sometimes we have to cancel them. Sometimes emergencies come up. So if there's some no's, it's okay. It doesn't mean that we're not performing. It just means, you know, we just didn't meet that. But I did lower them, so maybe we can get some more yeses next year. Okay, on page 74, again, there was a small typo that I did not notice. For the current year, it should have said 25-26, and it says 25-25. So that has also been corrected. Okay, and this was a good question. On page 80, it says projected court-appointed attorney costs were more than doubled. Why is that? So last year in our court-appointed attorney, we went through and we hadn't raised our fees in a very long time, and increasing with the DUIs, and our court is almost up to pre-COVID levels. We've seen a very large amount of cases now, and it came to time that we had to review our fees, and we had to look at those if we were going to keep the attorneys that we had, and so we had to raise our rates there in order to keep them. Then we had one court-appointed attorney leave, so now we're only down to one. We're trying to get another one right now, so we want to make sure that we keep him. So that's why those fees more than doubled. But also remember, when we budget at the time, we're budgeting to our, what we were, I don't want to say guess, but we're doing our best calculation at that time. And like I said, our court is doing really, really well, and we had a lot more cases than I anticipated. So I will be coming to council before the end of the year, and you will see me coming with a resolution. That number's actually going to end at about 32,000, not 20,000, because of the increase in the cases. So honestly, it's only raising with what I think the growth will be next year. So it's not quite 50%. Okay. So on page 84, there was a question. The last sentence in the first paragraph is unclear. So I changed that. You can look that up where it says the general fund, comma. I changed that to a period, then said while capital park improvements are funded by the general fund, park system development charges, donations, and grants, to make that a complete sentence. Then on page 90, this was brought to my attention that where it says goals for 26, it probably should stay the same throughout the document. When I send the narratives to the department heads, they do them, they send them back to me. I just try to critique them and the best that I can. It was said to me that we should probably be the same on all the narratives. So where it says goals for 26, it should say 25, 26. We agreed it should stay consistent. And then 25 accomplishments, it should say 24, 25 accomplishments. So I've done that throughout the whole document. I made them all the same. It still means the same thing, but it's going to look the same. Okay. Same thing on page 91 for the chart. And it says 23, 24, should say 24, 25, not 25, 26. I made that revision as well. And again, when you look at these pages, if we can keep going through them, on page 102, same thing. There was it says 26 adopted budget versus projected actual. That should say adopted budget versus 25 projected. Should say 26 proposed budget versus 25 adopted budget. So I made that change also. Okay, and then the rest of the ones from pages 144, same thing. There was a wrong budget year, and that was fixed. So that was the critiquing, and all those changes have been made, and when we do file for our budget award, they'll all be corrected. And then the next question that we had was from our mayor, and his question was on page 87. What is $22,000 for the parks computer network on page 87? So this charge here, this is the IT share for the parks for the Molalla communications bill. This is for the IT services such as the phones, the cameras, the broadband. The monthly bill is around $21,000 a month, and roughly the park share is about $1,100 a month. So that's what that is. The second question was on council, what is or why is there a difference in benefits and taxes from the last year on page 83? And when the council went to doing paychecks, I sat up the benefits and the salaries, and I had put in there roughly $2,000 for retirement benefits, but unless you reach a certain amount of hours, that doesn't work for PERS, so there wasn't any need to keep that on there. So I removed that this year, so that's why there was a change in that. Then on number 3, it says, I'm curious on how fuel budgets are going down. I'm especially interested in this with the PD if we are hiring more officers. So again, we try to budget for our best calculation. So all that is we just budgeted more than what we actually spent. So when I base the numbers off for the new year, I base them off of numbers where I anticipate we're going to end at, and then I project for the next year. So that's why. We just budgeted more than what we used. Just because we budget it, we don't always spend it. Okay, and then CP Eric Vermillion, I like that. Had a question. Please remind me about the following items in the budget. Page 70. Meetings and other expenses for $25,000. The last time we had a meeting and other admin expenses was 2 years ago when it was $750. What caused this increase? So we had decided last year to add an additional line for the AV services for the meetings, and then also for other incidentals with the OCCMA and the meetings and the lunches. And so when I did the budget last year, I didn't segregate that out, and I'm segregating it out this year. So this year, that's what the $25,000 for is for our AV, and we're also updating all of our equipment, and that's going to go across 2 budget years. So there's going to be roughly an additional $10,000 that was added to what those services are going to be. So next year, when you see that on the budget, it's going to be considerably less because we're going to have our equipment upgraded. Then the next question was on page 71, capital improvements. What is the capital project for in the administrative budget for $80,000? So if you look on page 65, on the resources page, you're going to see that there are transfers from sewer, street, storm, and water. And when you add those up, they're going to equal the $80,000. So when the police move over to their new building, Public Works will be coming back over to City Hall. And when they do, they're going to have to do some remodeling when they're there. So that money is there to where the old patrol room is. They're going to have to remodel that for the planning department. They're going to have to change out some windows upstairs. And it's also to make this building ADA fully compliant. So that's what that project money is for. Then on page 83, special counsel projects for $4,000. This increased from $750 to $4,000. If we discussed this, I forgot. So again, the actual balance for that is not going to be $750. It's going to be closer to $3,000. What goes into this account are expenses that are made up from like park stickers, the CCA dinners, the council members' promotional items, yard signs, maybe things that we have going on. So all I did was increase that actually by an additional $1,000 compared to what we actually spent this year. Okay, then on page 95, there is a question there that says, what is the library seed money? What is the library seed money? So if you refer to page 100, you will see that there's a capital outlay project for construction for $3 million, and then the project design for $200,000. This is the seed money that the library has been saving to put towards a new library facility. The library will be starting this process next fiscal year, and we hope to build a new library here at the Civic Center. Okay. And then our last round of questions came from Laura. I don't know how to say your last name.
It's Kleisik.
Kleisik.
Thank you.
Okay. Didn't want to butcher it there. So Laura's question was on page 48. And how is it ensured that reserves are not spent? So I kind of explained this earlier when we talked about the contingencies. Again, reserves we can't spend, so those are our beginning fund balances, things that stay there, and then our contingencies, we can use them, but we have to go to council and we have to ask to spend those, and it has to be on a project or, you know, something for that fund that we can spend it on. So that's how we reserve those numbers. And then the next question was on page 99. On the library budget. And the question was, why was there such an increase to the salaries and wages and the benefits of the library? And how is the library funded and things like that? The library is not funded by the city. The library is funded by the library district. Health insurance and retirement figures did go up. And the library has, for many, many years, has only seen COLA increases. They have not done a rate study on their wages. And we conducted one this year and found out that we were very, very low because they had been saving so much money, which is why they can have that seed money that they do have. So if we were going to keep the talent that we had and be able to attract more talent, we had to make sure that we were competitive in our wages. And so that's why you see that increase this year, is because we did do a rate adjustment to all the positions. And then next year when you see the budget, it's going to be back to just COLA. So it'll be more of what you normally see. And then the third and then the final question was kind of more about the document and the relationships that we have when partnerships within the area. And again, you can read that later on if you'd like. And what I did was I referred Laura to the electronic version to maybe go through and look at our action and vision plan and read through it and read our goals and that we have. Read about our Heritage Art Walk and the things that we have done with Grand Ron and to promote that in the city. Okay, that was all of the questions. So I have worked here now for 6 years, and I think it's been pretty interesting that when I started here just 6 short years ago, we were trying to do budgets with a lot of unknowns. We didn't know, we knew we needed a police facility, but we didn't know where it was going to be at. We were in the process of trying to get the project started for the wastewater treatment facility, but we didn't know when that was going to be. And it's been really nice to actually see in this budget those projects happening, and there's no more trying to guess what those numbers are. We have real numbers. We have a balanced budget. And I'm very proud of this budget, and it's nice to just to be a small part of that progress and see it go and grow. So, does anybody have any questions? Any? Okay, I'm done.
Well done.
Okay.
And Christy, I owe you an apology. I did find my expanded budget. The consent agenda was on there, so I just overlooked it. So thank you for that. So next up, we have Library Director Hadley.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you all. Thank you so much for your time and being here. I'm going to start out by saying, see these cool bags? They're right over there. Please take one as you leave. The Molalla Library celebrated its 125th anniversary / birthday this year. We are the oldest continually serving library in Clackamas County. And that is something to be proud of.
Yes.
It's definitely something staff, and Becca, the assistant director, even went over to the Dibble House and did a lot of research about how that happened. And it started out in somebody's house. And they moved out of town and people didn't like it, so they put it in the harness shop for a long time. And then it was in the basement of City Hall. And now we're where we're at, and in the future, it's going to be someplace else. So, but throughout it all, the library continually serves this community. The library's budget starts on page 99. I do hope that you had a chance to start on page 94 and read our narrative. We have some really great pictures there of the activities that we have and the staff doing their thing. We have an incredible staff right now at Molalla at the library, and they're very creative and they're drawing people in, and it's really awesome to see. It's really, they're creative and it just kind of awes me. The library is funded by the Library District of Clackamas County. It's funded at 0.3974 per thousand of assessed value of real property. We receive our funding both from the incorporated city of Molalla as well as a portion of the surrounding unincorporated areas like Colton and Molino and south of town to the Marion County line and places like that. Our programs are increasing in attendance, and our programming team is skilled in both presenting programs and finding excellent presenters and performers. Please take a look at our lineup for summer. There's so much going on. They've been really hard at work. We're having 4 music in the parks this year. Trent Beaver will be back, and Timothy James will be back, and then a couple other people, and I can't remember who they are, but my staff knows who they are, and that's the important thing. But we also have some things going on. Reptile Man will kick us off, and Dan will be there.
He
for
likes
sure.
it. He likes
He
Reptile
loves
Man.
it so much, doesn't he? So we have a lot going on this summer. Please take part in the adult summer reading challenge. It's only 10 hours of reading, which counts as an audiobook. So if you listen, that counts. And then there's other activities you can do that earn you badges for. We've got some great prizes for the end of the summer. And so we would love to see some more adult finishers. So I'm looking at everybody. Come on, 10 hours. 10 hours worth of reading. That's not that bad.
Yeah.
And if you read to your kid, that counts. It counts for you and it counts for your kid. So there you have it. So, and when we're talking about budget, as we see prices increasing, my staff is really, really, really excellent at finding bargains. I will tell you, I have never seen such bargain seekers in my life. But they do a really, really incredible job. And so we are getting the biggest bang for our buck that we possibly can. And so I'm really impressed with their skills in doing that. Digital services, ebooks, and streaming audio and video, it's getting really increasingly popular. And so our budget actually does reflect that trend. We kind of are holding steady with print materials, but I will tell you the demand for e-content is just continuing to rise. Mm-hmm. Each and every month, I see it just rising. So we have budgeted for that for the coming fiscal year. And as Cindy pointed out, you will notice in the capital outlay section on page 100, we have budgeted for the design and possible beginning construction of a new facility. The city is using the opportunity created by the building of the police department and other department moves to redesign and repurpose the Civic Center to accommodate a new library for the community to enjoy at a lower cost than having to purchase land and start from scratch on a building. Staffing levels are remaining the same, and this is a very sustainable budget for the coming fiscal year. Does anybody have any questions for me?
I'd just like to say, I've heard all the scuttle going on throughout the county with libraries, issues, budgets. Mr. Huff's even inserted himself into a committee to help protect our library, and it's really nice to hear how well and how much our library has to offer. And so I just wanted to give you a lot of credit for that, because it doesn't seem like I can ever go to a county meeting without hearing some issue with some library or funding or needing a new building. And just between possibly looking at this building, you know, how you have your staff set up, all the services you provide, I think it's an excellent way to say great job to you and your staff.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
May I add something? I did actually win an adult finisher Lego set once, and it was pretty awesome. So I can attest. Anyway, check it out, people.
So,
Very cool.
and we're on Facebook. We've got a website. We're on Instagram. So there's a lot of different places to find out. We have an e-newsletter that you can sign up for. So there's a lot of ways to find out what's going on. So anyway, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done. Exciting to see what's happening. All right, next up we have Police Chief Long. Can you please join us?
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for your time today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the goals we accomplished this fiscal year and the goals we want to accomplish next fiscal year with our current budget, and kind of read some of those off to you. The biggest thing is we've crossed a huge milestone with the construction of the new police department, and I'm happy to report that it's completely on schedule, completely within budget. It's looking fantastic. This would not be possible without the hard work from our contractors, architects, and all the city staff involved in this project. It's not just the police department, it's every staff member is involved in this project. So we're super excited, and that's taken up a majority of our time this year, is just getting this thing built and getting it done on time. So we're super excited about it. And when we have this new police department, it's going to give us the opportunity to do things that we cannot do right now. One of the big things it's going to give us an opportunity to do is host big trainings. And that is a huge expense on our budget when I have to send officers sometimes 300 miles away. You pay for food, lodging, everything else. When we host these, not only do I save that, I can generally get my officers in the classes for free. So we're looking forward to that. One of the visioning goals that we had was for us to start a citizen academy, and now we will have the space for that. So this next fiscal year, we're going to start working on curriculum. I can't say it's going to get done this year because I want to do it right, but we're going to start working on curriculum for the new for a new citizens academy. We're continuing to participate in several multidisciplinary teams, including a traffic team, our K-9 program, the multidisciplinary homicide team with Clackamas County. This affords great training and experience to our officers, who then bring it back and pass it on to the other officers. So Molalla is very highly respected. Our detective is very highly respected, and has actually been involved in some pretty high-profile cases with her talent. And so very proud of my officers, and we want to continue. And you'll see there's some more money added into training, because we want to continue to train our officers to be the best they can be for their community. So for the next fiscal year, I would put it that we're going to be in major transition. We're going to be transitioning into a new police facility, which is state-of-the-art. We're going to have to train everybody on how to use all the cool stuff that's going to be inside this building. Super excited about that. But it's also going to be transitioning with our staff. I'm going to lose 3 people next year to retirements. So we got to start really planning on, I can't start it yet, but once they retire, adding additional staff. And I will say in the last 3 to 5 years, we have been very fortunate on attracting top talent to this police department. The last 3 hires have been lateral police officers from other agencies, and that says great things about the city and the police department and the community that we live in. That's about all. Oh, the big change you'll see in the budget is we are going to start a lease agreement with Molalla Communications regarding our laptops, MDCs, those computers you see in our cars. Currently, what we do is every 3 to 5 years, when they wear out, we have to come up with a lot of money to replace all those computers. And it's not only the computers and the docking stations in the car, and then you have to pay a tech to come out and wire everything. So we're going to start a 5-year lease program where we'll be able to phase those in and out over 5 years, so we're not trying to take huge chunks of money out of a budget every 3 to 5 years. I think the budget you see before you, you know, it shows that we're being fiscally responsible and spending the taxpayers' money wisely, and I can answer any questions you guys might have.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
How many officers do we have?
Full-time?
Mm-hmm.
19.
Chief, aren't you also dealing with some staff hires too, along with everything else that's going on right now?
Yeah, the narrative you guys see inside the budget packet was written when I was down 1 person, and now I'm down 3 since that happened.
That's staff, not
Staff.
officers.
That's 3 officers, and I'm down 1 clerical staff position and about to be down a 2nd clerical staff position. We're currently hiring, and again, I have 3 laterals that are in backgrounds right now that are interested in those spots, but it's gonna take time.
Will there be a grand opening celebration?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
We'll look forward to that.
Right, boss?
Always looking for a party in Molalla, so.
Yeah, we're going to have Counselor Childress plan that party.
There we go. She's very good at it.
Madam Chair, may
Yes.
I? The chief is always, doesn't brag on his staff, so I'm going to for him. His office staff is retiring, so these are sought-out positions. The applicants have come in great numbers, like 136 people applying for the positions to work at Molalla Police Department. So it is a highly sought-after department. So just wanted to add that.
That is great. It's great to see how competitive we are and people are attracting top talent. I think that's so important for our community, so well done.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the Community Development Department with Assistant City Manager Corthell.
Thank you, guys. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Budget Committee, thank you. We've got a lot to talk about, as I do every year, it seems. A lot of funds to go over. I'm going to draw out the highlights, so please, please, please don't be shy. Ask me questions. I love to answer them and get information out to folks. But like I said, I've got about 13 funds to go through. So I'm going to draw out those things that kind of caught my eye as I went through them, and hopefully they're the same things that maybe caught yours. But if not, please let me know, and I'll get your questions answered. So we'll start with the Parks Fund on page 84. The Parks Fund is really an activity of the general fund. We don't have a dedicated parks resource as far as revenue goes. That is general fund dollars. So a few things to just highlight here. Page 84 starts the narrative, and page 87 starts the actual numbers. Parks capital, $32,000 there. Is for potential grant funds that we may receive. We'll be applying for those grants. One's a Mount Hood Territory grant. If we don't get those grants, then we don't spend that money. So that is a placeholder. We have to have a spot to be able to spend it should we get it. So that is why that money's there, and it's kind of an obscure number. The MCC Park Assistance line. MCC has been, and at least in my time, the #1 contributor to the city's capital park system. New playgrounds, pickleball courts, gazebos, the list of things that MCC has helped contribute to and provide for the city is really kind of endless. So we're hoping that they'll be willing again to provide some dollars this year, and we think they will, based on conversations. So that money would be used to finish off the Fox Park tot area, where we replaced the broken structure, but haven't put back in the springy horses and some of the stuff that the kids really like. So we'll be updating those things. The Ivor Davies bridges are on their last leg, so we need to make sure those bridges hold up when people go over them. So we'll be looking to replace those bridges in the park. And the Clark Park sports fields. So you guys have probably seen what the mayor calls Mount Molalla up at the north annex of Clark Park. That dirt was dirt from our wastewater treatment plant site, not the plant itself, to be clear, a field next to it. And so we knew we would need to be doing some leveling up there, and rather than purchase that dirt, since we had about 7,000 yards that we had to take out, it made a whole lot of sense to dump it up there and stage it and get it ready for that project. So we'll be looking to get some design work done on that and some sequencing, because we do have a lot of events and things that take place at Clark Park and Bolander, and we really want to try not to interfere with those things if we can during the project. I'm sure there will be some interference, but we're going to do our best to sequence things in a way that's appropriate to try and avoid that. So that will be just the beginning of that project, preliminary design, you know, looking at some grading work and that sort of thing, not your full fields out the door. And if there should be any additional funding left over, we can look at sunshade for the pickleball courts. So we got the new Parks Master Plan, and that's one of the things that calls out in that plan. Park improvement SDCs. So again, that's more money towards Clark Park sports fields. Obviously, a project like that is fairly costly. Pre-design, design, budget, and timing. And then completion of phase 1 of Chief Yelkes Park, and completion of phase 2 final design and costs. So you guys know that Chief Yelkes Park is currently under construction. This is really just a carryover from this year for monies that don't get spent. So we have to cash flow these things because we can't afford to do them all in 1 year generally. And then also many of these projects just take a long time, so they can't get done in a year even if you did have all the money. So that's what that is. It just kind of rolls over. And that parks equipment line is for an aerator, so that we can start doing some aerating on the grassy areas in the parks, which is most of it, so that we can try to improve the health of the grass out there in-house, and make sure those things are being kept up to the best of our ability. Does anyone have any questions on parks besides what I've covered?
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
The Chief Yelkes Park, the access to that's going to be off of the Molalla Forest Road, right?
It actually is currently off of Forest Lane, and there will be, when I get into streets, we're actually going to be doing feasibility studies this year to see what the minimum and maximum will be, necessities would be to open up Molalla Forest Road, the north portion, as well as the south portion we'll look at as well. This year we conducted a comprehensive survey. That's really a pre-designed survey. You have to have all that information. It shows ownership, topography, all that good stuff, boundaries. And so that we can actually look to say, okay, what's the minimum we have to do in order to open this road safely? And what's the maximum we would have to do under the transportation system plan? And then bring it to the council to discuss what the plan would be going ahead with that based on that information. So I'll get more back to that in streets as well.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I'm going to move on to planning on page 89.
Corthell, actually, I did have one question. Could
Yes, sir.
you elaborate a little bit on the lack of consistent funding for everybody to hear? Because I know we're hitting that roadblock, and I think it's important for everybody to hear that we're getting ready to slow down on the progression of the new parks and start to look toward a funding source to keep the progression going.
Absolutely. So kind of what the mayor's driving at is that we're kind of reaching a tipping point with the amount of park land that we have that we can appropriately maintain. We've heard some folks that already have concerns about some of the maintenance, although they're fairly menial concerns in the grand scheme of things like some weeds and things like that aren't major concerns. But as we add Chief Yelkes Park to our inventory, that's another 5-acre park. And of course, just added Strawberry Park and improve the north annex of Clark Park. Those things are going to increase the amount of parkland that we have to maintain. Given that we don't have a dedicated funding source, we would either have to allow certain parks to not be addressed or certain things in parks to not be addressed, or kind of stop building parks until we can find a dedicated funding source, or until the tax revenue from potential growth and new businesses and things is able to catch up to that tipping point. Most, if not, I would say many, if not most, cities have some sort of a dedicated revenue source for parks. Many of them are in a district, a parks district, so that it's drawing from its very own tax base, similar to the library district in Clackamas County. or the fire district, or any other district really. They draw their own tax base, so it's different from the cities, and the city's not having to split that money with other things like police services and finance services and all those different things. The other thing that you see that's very, very common is, of course, a utility bill fee, some sort of a fee. If it's $1, $2, $5, it just depends on what city that you're in. And so sometimes that is a, well, not even sometimes, it's a very, very common way of garnering, funding that's dedicated to parks to be able to push that forward.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
All right. Planning is on page 89, starts the narrative. You guys probably are aware that planning's been very, very busy with long-range planning this year. I'm sure folks have been hearing about that, with urban growth boundary studies and that sort of thing. But today, luckily, we're here to talk about money. The big things here to notice is that, it's kind of stayed roughly stable in parks as far as the amount of money that's being spent there. That it takes to run that section of the city, but the numbers kind of vary, and that's typically due to grants that we're trying to apply for and obtain. So this year we've got $150,000 projected for an urban growth boundary study grant. What that is a transportation growth management grant that would update the transportation system plan, basically to account for current growth trends and any additional territory that was added to be able to plan the transportation infrastructure for those areas. So that's a grant that we'll apply for. Again, same with all grants. If we don't get it, we don't spend it because we don't have it to spend. But we do have to project it in there in order to be able to spend it should we get it, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the big variance in planning. You'll notice without that grant that the budget is actually about $70,750, which kind of runs parallel to the last 2 years of actuals and the approved from last year if you reduce those by the grant funding amount. So it's a fairly insubstantial difference. The one other kind of significant difference this year to last and the ones before is that we did have to add an associate planner. So an additional position within planning in order to field the number of applications and long-range planning and new laws that are coming down the pike for community development and that sort of thing. So there is one more position there. She's been, excellent. She operates really at a level far above an associate planner, and we're very, very lucky to have her. I think we just got lucky that she moved to Molalla and didn't want to commute to be the planning manager in Columbia County anymore and was willing to come on board with us. So she's been just excellent. I can't sing her praises enough. She's been amazing. There's nothing I can teach her. She teaches me something pretty much every day. So that's planning. Does anyone have any questions about any of that stuff or anything else?
With everything you guys have going on, kudos to you.
Thank you.
Because I know this also includes UGB, all the strategies you guys have, and everything else that comes in during the day. You guys absolutely knock it out of the park, and really appreciate you and your staff's work as far as planning goes. It's been incredible.
Thank you very much. And I'm just very, very blessed to have a very, very competent, really an exceptional staff, really all around me, and planning included. They're just excellent. I just would say nothing if they weren't. So they're amazing. I wouldn't say anything bad, but just be quiet. And then the other thing is we're able to reduce professional services by about $8,000 because of the new planner. We were actually using a consultant planner to bridge the gap between necessity for the new position and the workload. Because the workload was too big for what we had, but it wasn't quite big enough that it warranted bringing on another person quite yet. So we were using consultant services to do some of our planning applications through the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments. So we're able to reduce that funding slightly there. All right, streets is our next one, and that starts on page 101 in the narrative. This is a very interesting one. I think this is probably the one I'm going to spend the most time talking about, unless you guys have a lot of questions on anything else. But so starting with the revenue side of things, and you'll see this play out again on the expenses side of things, because those things have to match in order to have a balanced budget, right? But on the revenue side of things, you'll notice 63,000 in miscellaneous funding. That is for a $43,000 banner grant that we already applied for, and a potential $20,000 additional grant that we aim to apply for this year. And again, that would be for some of those more cultural and kind of beautification themed type of items. So again, grant funding, if we get it, we do the project. If we don't spend the money. So you guys, that's a common theme that you'll hear throughout. So you'd like to apply for a lot of grants, even though they take a lot of manpower to manage and all that good stuff. They're increase our ability to do some things, even though they also increase the draw on staff, but that's why we're here. The fund exchange for $124,000 in revenues, that is defederalized grant funds that we can use on the roads subject to the, subject really to the state of Oregon Constitution, and there's some language in there about using funds on roads and things. So really, we can use those things on most road projects. Next year, our plan with the fund exchange dollars that we still have from years bygone and the fund exchange dollars that we get will be, we're in about 90% design on an enhanced pedestrian crossing on North Molalla to go to the high school from to Francis. So we removed that crosswalk when we overlaid the street and updated the street, and the reason we haven't put it back in is because we saw a need for an enhanced pedestrian crossing. We've had some issues there in the past, and so we needed to get design work done on that, and it ended up that there were some right-of-way issues, and luckily those property owners have been amazing to work with, but the sidewalks were not on city property. So we worked with those folks to get the right-of-way dedications that we needed, so it kind of delayed the project a little bit more. We were expecting to finish it this year, but projects hit delays for things like that. That can't really be anticipated. But anyways, those property owners have been excellent. They're more than willing, and it's also good for them because cities have, we have some immunity if someone trips and falls on the sidewalk, recreational immunity that it's not, can't really sue the city, but if it's on private property, it's kind of a different story. So they were pretty thrilled to get that off of their risk list as well, I think. So it'll end up being an enhanced pedestrian signal with a flashing beacon, because as you guys know, when you're driving north out of Molalla on North Molalla in the morning, you're pretty much blind. And that has caused some significant issues with school kids crossing that location. So we want to really kind of put some calming features as well as some better controls there. So that's what you guys will see coming up this next year. And like I said, we're at 90% design, so that project should roll forward with ease. Building maintenance, that is, actually it's a little lower than last year, I think. Yeah. Yeah. But at any rate, I wanted to tell you guys what we're doing with that. We're adding a transfer switch at the shops so that I can transfer straight over under emergency circumstances. Our public works guys and of course our police and then our folks in fire that don't work for us, they work for a district. But those are the folks that are here when something goes wrong, all of them. If there's an ice storm, if there's a fire, if there's anything happens that goes wrong, these are the folks that are here making sure that things are taken care of, that the people, that the infrastructure and everything else is taken care of, as best as it can be. So it's important for those folks to have, electricity during emergency situations and that sort of thing. So add in transfer switch there, and then there's a pipe shed on the property that's really just not safe to be in at this point. It's kind of caving in. So we're going to get that reframed so that they can serve those guys for the next 40 to 50 years. All right, here's a fun one. So road surfacing under the materials and services section. The road surfacing program is something that we've started to, over the last few years, have started to really dive into. It's probably the number one complaint that I hear from the public, is that the roads have issues. And we're keenly aware of that as well, of course. So this year, you'll notice there's a road surfacing program for $480,000 under materials and services, but there's also a street servicing, there's also under street capital, there's $750,000 that's also for the street surfacing program. And the reason those are in two different locations is because the $480,000 is for treatments, crack seal, crack and slurry seal. So what that does is it takes a road that's kind of, going downhill on its pavement conditioning index, and it gets it up to a much higher index and preserves it. Because when the water gets in there, in those cracks, that's when stuff starts to break apart and really cause bigger problems. As long as your sub-base is good, your road's gonna last a long time. But if it starts to crack and get water in it, which we live in Oregon, so it's gonna get water in it if it's not sealed. So we seal it up, and that preserves the life of the street, just depending on the street, for anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 more years. And then the $750,000 under capital is for grind and inlays. That's for those streets that are too far gone to be able to do any treatments on them. And as you guys know, we have several of those. So the big thing I think to talk about this year is that shakes out to about $1.15 million, right? And so that is not a sustainable number. Again, it's kind of the same thing that we're dealing with in parks. It is just fine this year. It's completely balanced. You guys have seen we still have a pretty significant contingency in streets. A lot of that is for the potential development of future streets like Molalla Forest Road that the budget chair pointed out just a moment ago. But that number can't be sustained. We're going to be starting a work session, a series of work sessions with the council to talk about different funding options. And I bring this up because I think it's important for the council already knows all of this. It's really important for the budget committee to know this as not only as budget committee members, but as citizens, so that you guys can follow along, provide your feedback, and make sure that your neighbors are also hearing about this and providing their feedback. So that we can look at what might be other funding sources. And again, there are basically two standards that are out there for these dedicated funding sources. One, again, is the fee on the utility bill. That's pretty common. Most cities that I can think of off the top of my head do have some sort of fee like that, whether it's $1, again, up to 10 or even 14 or 15 some places. The other very common one is a gas tax, a local gas tax. So for instance, Silverton has a 2-cent gas tax, Canby has a 3-cent gas tax. That is something that would have to be passed by the voters, but again, we'll be working with the council to determine which route to go and doing a whole bunch of community engagement to garner some community feedback on which route to go. So anyway, that's just kind of a preview for that stuff. So I wanted to point out that even though we're able to spend over $1 million on the roads this year to try and make a big dent in them, what that really is doing is buying us time. Because basically with that investment and then our standard investment of about $300,000 a year, we're able to maintain the current pavement conditioning index citywide, or projected to be able to maintain that pavement conditioning index citywide. So the streets won't get worse, but they won't get better. I mean, some of them will get a lot better, but other ones will degrade, and they'll offset those. So that's kind of what we're looking at. So basically, it gives us 5 years to keep that PCI how it is, but really, it gives us the time we need to be able to have those conversations with the council and the community and determine which way to go, as far as how high to try and raise the PCI versus how much money does that cost, and what mechanisms do we want to use to fund that. So that'll be some work that we'll be setting about. So I just wanted to draw a lot of attention to that. I think I've done that.
I have a question about when we looked at the street fees and doing something to bridge that gap several years ago. There was a study done of all of our streets and what condition they were ranked in a B, C, D, E, F, or whatever the ranking was on those. And we've had some great improvements in some areas, other areas continue to decline. Will we do that kind of a study again so that we can create an awareness campaign about where the money would go, what it would cost, and how to figure all that out? So
yes and yes. We updated the pavement conditioning index this year, so that work is done. Okay. And we were actually able to improve the index by 1 point. which is kind of an accomplishment when you're dealing with kind of a lack of funding. So it's been a lot of, hard work and effort. And really, like I said, I just have great folks. They're able to find these opportunities, and they find them, and it'll be, the county's going to do a culvert on South Molalla Avenue where it turns to county. Well, we need to upgrade our pump station there. If we piggyback on their project, it saves us all the project management fees. It saves us a whole bunch of engineering fees and all of that stuff. So we're able to do those things for substantially cheaper than what they would cost to do them in-house. And my folks have just been excellent at finding those opportunities, like Diana was saying about her folks. Mine are a little less of bargain hunters, but I would call them opportunity hunters. They've identified several projects like that where the city's been able to get things done, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other things that they've done when we get to sewer as well. So, but yeah, so that's one of the ways we were able to kind of accomplish that. The other thing that we've done is we've said, hey, if we're going to replace pipes underground, we need to do the street at the same time, if assuming it's warranted, right? And typically it is. So that has saved a lot of money in terms of mobilization costs and that sort of thing. And then as far as that pavement conditioning index and that program, we use that as our basis, but we also have an analytical framework that we feed that through. Because while the pavement conditioning index, it just looks at the condition of the asphalt or concrete. We only have one concrete road, but the condition of the asphalt or concrete, and says, hey, this is this number. 82 to 85 is what you're hoping for system-wide. 100 is a brand new street. It's pretty intuitive. But basically, we run it through this analytical framework that also asks the question, hey, are there pipes under here that need to be replaced sometime within the next 10 years? It's probably not a wise investment to dig up and rebuild that street and then come back 6 years later and dig it up again and put pipes in it. So we run it through an analytical framework on top of that to make sure that we're not sinking costs into things that are going to be wasted within, a decade or less. But yeah, so my folks are finishing off the development of that list for this year, and then we'll start at the top and go as far as $750,000 gets us as far as the rebuilds or the dig outs. And then the 480, like I said, would be for the crack sealing and all that good stuff.
You've been very creative in these solutions. That's great.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to touch on, you've kind of hinted around it, but where you've turned that dollar into $1.50, can you break it down? Was it Heinz Street? You did that last year. You had the pipe work, and it turned it into also doing a repave, which went toward the pipe work instead of coming out of the street maintenance fee. That way it gives people a real realistic example of how you guys are making the dollar go a lot farther.
Yeah. So, some of the work is just that there had been a bygone principle, we'll call it, that if you're going to touch a street, that it needs to be fully developed. So if you take any street in the old part of town, if you're going to touch that street, then you're going to have to spend for one block of street there, because it does not have storm under it. It's old. Doesn't have sidewalks. So under that bygone principle, it was you touch that street, then if you're going to do anything with it, you've got to fully develop it. Well, now you're talking about these days about, all things being equal, and projects vary by what's under the ground, of course, but roughly $1.5 million for a block. That is absolutely just not possible. There's not enough money for that at all. So what we've kind of said is, hey, these streets have functioned just fine for the last 100 years, but they're disgusting and turned into gravel at this point. We can come in here and do an overlay, and it'll continue to function well and be a new street the same way it was. So that's one way. The other way is there's been some public-private partnerships that have helped us with that, and as well as some of the alternative methods that we've been using, like cured-in-place piping, where if you're going to dig up a storm main again and do, let's just call it one block of storm main, again, all things being equal, that's it's an old concrete storm main or I'm sorry, sewer main, and it needs to come out, and is scheduled in the master plan. Well, we can actually reset the capital life of that if it's eligible. We can go out and scope it, and we can do something, this new system called cured in place piping, where they basically put a pipe in liquid form and use UV to harden it, and then you've got a brand new pipe inside of the old one, and it resets the capital life. So those projects, when you're looking at the overall capital plan in the say the sewer system master plan, collection system replacements, I don't even remember the number, it's astronomical, but we're doing those things for literally probably 1/20th of the cost. So we can, for $45,000, reset the capital life of a pipe and have it function perfectly, as long as it's eligible. If it's crushed or something like that, it's just not eligible. But and reset the capital life of that pipe for 40 years for $45,000 instead of $900,000. So it's actually been very, very effective, and again, something that my guys came up with, that we researched, and we determined, gosh, this is great. I don't know why we're not doing this. So anyways, yeah, so that's a couple of examples for you.
Great.
So back on streets a little bit. So you've got $750,000 for the street resurfacing, and then $43,000 for the street portion of the Lola water and sewer main replacement project. So Lola, I don't know if you've driven down that recently, but it's bad, and it won't be for too much longer. So SDC improvement, that is the north side of Oregon 211 from Hezi to west of Ona. That's one that the developer has done the south side. The city was not able to require them to do the north side because it's off-site and isn't impacting their development. So we were able to partner with them and have them do the design work, et cetera, et cetera. So again, we saved a substantial amount of money, although it's taken longer than we would have liked. But at any rate, it's substantially cheaper because we're not having to manage the project, and all those things cost, a fair amount of money, probably anywhere from 10 to 12% of project cost, so which adds up over time, obviously. And some bigger project, it adds up right away. And then that's that Molalla Forest Road feasibility study and options, determining what's the minimum that we need to do to open this road, and how much will that cost, and then what would it cost to do the full design or the full build out of the road per the TSP. So we're kind of looking at ways to get things opened up and moving, that are safe and legal without having to, again, build the Taj Mahal every time we do something. So. All right, the SDC reimbursements line, that is our sidewalk grant. And if that sidewalk grant isn't fully utilized in a given year, typically what we're trying to do is take that money and put it towards sidewalk infill. Again, that's all in our transportation capital plans and stuff, where there's areas where we're just missing a bunch of sidewalk and that sort of thing. So, but this is mostly the sidewalk grant. That's what it's dedicated to. It's just as we get towards the end of the year, if we're not seeing that it's all being used by the community, then we have those funds there to do some other sidewalk work that needs to be done. So. We talked about the ODOT fund exchange. That's the North Molalla Enhanced Crossing at Francis. And any remaining funding that would be left over from that would be ADA ramp installations that we have to do. We've got to get every ramp in the city that's not on the state highway ADA compliant. So we kind of nip off a few of those each year. It's important for us to have a program for a number of reasons. One, because I think most would argue it's the right thing to do, but also for the fact that if we don't have a program, any street that we overlay that has a curb, we have to put the ADA ramps in right then. Now that ADA ramps typically cost, if they're a one-way ADA ramp, about $15,000 a piece. So you can imagine how, if you're doing a long run of road, that gets pretty expensive pretty quickly. By having a program, it allows us to say, hey, we don't have to do these now. We can nip these off as funding allows, as long as we're actually making a good faith effort to do them, and we are. So that's what that's about. All right. All right, so that concludes streets. Does anyone have questions about anything at all? Streets-wise? All right. Okay, so yeah, stay tuned for those work sessions coming up starting on the 28th. We'll be talking a lot about if and how we can generate a funding source for those that can keep that sustained resource to continue to upgrade our pavement condition index. Okay, let's see, wastewater treatment plant capital project fund is on page 111. And 112 is where your numbers are. So we all know we're getting a new wastewater treatment plant. It's going in right now. It's very exciting. I've been here 5 years, and it's been talked about since well before my time. So it's really exciting to see it coming. I'm just going to go over the funding sources with you guys. I think it's good to know. There's not a whole lot to say about this. The project is on time and on budget as we sit here today. That could change, but right now it's on time and on budget. So. The expenditure category kind of does a good job of breaking them down. So you'll notice that top line says CWSRFP. That is a permanent loan from the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. Again, those are federal EPA dollars that get filtered down through DEQ, and they loan them out to cities like us at a very low interest rate and favorable terms in order to complete projects such as this. The CWSRFI, that is the same resource, but it's interim funding. And basically what happens is when you get financed by USDA, which we are, with the bulk of our project, you have to have a gap funding resource because USDA will not pay the money up front. They will only pay the money on the complete project because they have to sell bonds on it. It's a little complex how all that works, but at the end of the day, it's just to say that this is not only common, but the standard when you're getting USDA funding, at least in the state of Oregon, that you have to have interim financing. So DEQ has a mechanism set up to do that. And basically, the city pays about 1 year of interest on that loan, and then USDA comes through and pays it off with their bond sales. We were able to obtain $5 million in grant funding from the Oregon Lottery, from the state legislature. So that money's on there. We're expecting that to come in this year. Excuse me. And then, of course, USDA, you're not going to see that on this list because we won't complete this project till November of 27, and so you won't see that budgeted until the fiscal year 27-28 budget, which is when USDA will come in and pay off that interim loan. And the reason you go with USDA, and for whatever it's worth, is that they offer substantially more favorable terms, both in terms of your interest rate and your term, the term of loan. So it's a little bit longer term. It's a 40-year term. That's not always terribly desirable with infrastructure because it's not, sometimes the lifespan isn't quite that. But Mollalla's been using its current system for a lot longer than 40 years. So the other cool thing about the new plant is that it's modular in nature. So that means if the city does continue to grow at a rate that is kind of unexpected, or 50 years from now, that you don't have to start over the way we are today and build a whole new treatment mechanism and turn the lagoons that are activated sludge lagoons. So the biological process happens in the lagoon right now. It's actually going to happen in the SBR, the sequence batch reactor, which forces that biological process to happen a lot quicker, and then those lagoons will be freshwater storage, clean water storage. I shouldn't say fresh, it's not fresh. It's clean though, you could drink it. You don't want to, but you could. And so we hold that in there, and then we discharge that to the river when we're allowed to do that. And we're also going to be producing a substantially cleaner quality of effluent that will go in the river too. So it's just a win-win-win all around, except for the pocketbook, to be honest. And so that lottery funding, $5 million of that's all grant funding. We'll also be forgiven of $500,000 from the SRF. So $500,000 of that will turn into a grant upon project completion, and then USDA will provide us with $2 million of that in grant funding of their payoff amount. So they'll reduce our debt by $2 million off the bat. We also had 1.25 million from the federal legislature, but when the administrations changed, and obviously we know there's been some upheaval in those fields, so that kind of went away. So we don't know that we're done with that yet. We're still working with our new representative to see if we can get back on the list and get approved for that. But at this point, we're fully funded. That's really just icing on the cake at that point if we're able to get that. But we're going to keep trying because it brings your bill down. And who doesn't like a lower bill? So that kind of goes over the wastewater treatment plant. Do you have any questions on that?
What is a completion date for
No.
all of it?
November of 27.
Thank you, sir.
And that the sequence batch reactor and that sort of thing will be operational 8 months in advance of that. That is when the ponds the full conversion, because we have to drain the ponds, remove all the sludge, take it out, let them dry, and then they can be converted to clean water holding. So.
I have one quick question. I have one quick
Yes,
question.
ma'am.
USDA is federal, correct?
I'm sorry?
USDA is federal, correct?
That's
Any
right.
risk of any upheaval in that in terms of bond
You know,
reimbursement?
that's an interesting question because I had obviously some very significant concerns myself. And in contact with USDA, they were worried too for the first few weeks, but now it seems that things have shaken out and there's no concern on their end. But I still have my own concerns just because, you know, who knows, right? But at the end of the day, we have engaged with DEQ, and DEQ will fund our entire project on a permanent basis. We'll get a little bit less favorable terms, not really that bad. It's really just the length of it. So there is backup funding if it's needed.
No,
So yeah,
totally
I was
they're
I was
intact.
very worried about that too.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
All right. Oh, thank you. I need it. Can you tell? Now, sewer is on page 115. Okay, a couple of interesting points from sewer. You start your numbers on page 118. Personnel will be increasing a little bit this year. We have a fourth operator. The new plant requires 4 operators. It's a little bit more labor intensive than the old one, plus the volumes that we're going to be working with will continue to rise. So we've reached that point where a fourth operator is necessary. So we're looking to fill that position probably circa mid-fiscal year. We like to hold off until we really feel like we really need it because we save all that money in the interim. But we have identified an internship program. Actually, again, one of my folks, our water quality superintendent, identified an internship program with Clackamas County Wet Lab where they're teaching folks how to do water and wastewater treatment. So we're going to actually have someone out here working, and we're kind of looking at it as a dress rehearsal because these folks come to you already certified, well-trained. You know, they're getting a lot of good education in this field from Clackamas County. So we'll have an intern out there working to help folks, especially during the irrigation season. During the summer, we land apply all of our water, and that is very, very labor intensive. It's farm work. Those guys are out there, guys and gals are out there moving all the all of the irrigation equipment, the big guns. They're, moving them back and forth with tractors. They're making sure they're running and have gas, and it's really you're doing ranch work. So they'll have a fourth person for that, which is super helpful because with 3, it gets to be a lot. Someone's got to be at the plant making sure that's working, and then anyways, you can kind of see how it would go. But they're really excited to have that intern, and I'm really excited to be able to have a dress rehearsal with a potential future employee. It sure beats an interview. So anyways, that's kind of fun and interesting. And again, Seth did a great job finding that. The short-lived assets line, you guys will notice that popped up last year and continues this year. There's a particular amount of funding that USDA requires us to put in the short-lived assets line. That money can only be spent on our short-lived assets, which we provide USDA a list of. That's things like in our pump stations, like, you know, the pumps, the controls, that sort of thing, or, oh gosh, grit removal systems, effluent filtration system, UV lighting. It's the little stuff, right? But the little stuff that, if it goes bad, is a real problem, and it's not cheap, right? So they require you to have that. It's part of them kind of guaranteeing their loan, you know, kind of like your bank has to have, you know, a lien on your house. Same kind of thing. They're kind of saying, hey, you have to budget this if you're going to get our money, because we want to make sure you're not letting your system fall apart while we're building you a new plant, or, you know, funding your new plant. So that's kind of a new line over the last 2 years I thought I'd point out. The CIPP program, we talked a little bit about that. That's the one where we're able to reset that capital life of those pipes. So we've formalized that program this year, and we've gone out to bid and received and awarded a contract to Iron Horse for that. So we now have 5-year on-call CIPP contractor, and what that basically means is that we're able to, for the next 5 years, we have to go back out to bid in 5 years, but if we want to use them at any time during that 5 years, we can just engage them. We don't have to go back out to bid and do all those things. So that's a pretty substantial cost reducer as well, because going out to bid and doing all those things is fairly costly in terms of staff time, which is money, of course. And so that's a really exciting one. It's just another way that our folks have come up with to you know, turn $1 into $5. So they've done a good job with that. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
It's 8 o'clock. Would now be an appropriate time to take a break?
Yes, or if I had 15 more minutes, I can probably make it through.
How does everybody feel? Do you want a break, or do you want to power through another 15 minutes?
Power through. I'll do another 15.
Power through?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm rolling. Thank
All
you,
right.
guys. I appreciate it.
We're gonna start the timer.
Okay, all right. All right, here we go. All right, I'm done. No, so I get told that at 30 seconds right there, right?
Yeah.
So the sewer capital line, that money is for the Lola mainline replacement. That's one of those lines that was not CIPP eligible. It needs to be replaced. And the South Molalla lift station, and that's that opportunity project that I mentioned earlier that actually our engineering section manager identified that as an opportunity, and so we're going to be getting that done for probably about $200,000, $225,000 less than that project would have cost. So, I mean, it's yet another one where he's probably saved $500,000 this year by identifying these things. He's done a great job. Let's see. SDC reimbursement, that line, again, is more money for that South Molalla lift station. They're not cheap, as you can imagine, and you'll see what I mean. It's a whole building and, you know, all that good stuff, and a generator so that if the power goes out, that we don't start shooting stuff out of our manholes that we don't want shooting out of our manholes. It keeps the system running. And then the other portion of that is for the new MPDS permit capital requirements. We don't know what those will be yet. The MPDS permit is the National Pollution Discharge and Elimination System. It's the EPA program that's managed by each state, under which each wastewater plant owner discharges their effluent. There's a whole bunch of rules, testing requirements, and all of that sort of thing. And we suspect, actually we don't even suspect, we expect that this new permit puts us in a new category since we're over 10,000 people now, and we're what's called a major facility. There's no way around that. And so that's going to come with some additional kind of testing requirements, and might come with some additional other kind of capital requirements like observation wells. So when you have lagoons, sometimes, you know, you have to have an observation well where you dig a groundwater well to check and see if the lagoon's not penetrating the groundwater. It's interesting that we're doing it now because we're putting water that's cleaner than the river into those once that new permit comes out. But the water that's been in the lagoons for the last 100 years is actual sludge and biological things. So it's interesting, but I'm not DEQ. So they're gonna be requiring some things. I don't know if you guys all heard the sarcasm there, but it's interesting.
I think we got it.
Is that what that was?
Are there any questions about sewer at all? Any other things that come to mind? All right. Okay, water, our other favorite system, starts on page 120, and you get over to your numbers on page 124. Again, water would be adding a half of an employee to fully staff this year. That position's actually already been in existence. It just hasn't been filled. It's hard to find someone with the right qualifications, and that's why that WET program is so amazing that they're actually getting these folks qualified. There's been a real dearth of qualified operators in the water and wastewater world in Oregon over the last 10 years. So sometimes it can be hard to find anyone, to be honest. Water capital, that's the Lola main line. We'll be placing the water line at the same time. That's a steel line. Those have to go. They just get eaten up by our soils. Design and funding support for the water intake project. So the water intake project, I don't know if you guys are aware, we are completing pre-design. We're not done yet, but we do have a draft pre-design report, which means we're just about done. And that will kind of set the, once the council looks at that and makes some decisions based on that pre-design report, that will kind of set our course for where we go next as far as getting that new intake designed and funded. So we'll be looking to do design and find funding support for the intake project this year. We also hope to complete the property acquisition for pressure reducing valves. Our system, you know, at your tap, the minimum system pressure is 20 PSI. And you really don't want to have more than about 45 or 50, or it can potentially start bursting pipes. And in Molalla, at some portions, you're at like 120 PSI, which, I mean, is awesome if you're trying to like get something unstuck from your car, but not so great for your pipes. And it does a couple of things to us is that if we get a main break, which that pressure tends to lend itself to in a particular portion of town with high pressures, it creates a siphon for other parts of town. So typically when we would have to do like a boil water notice for like one block because we had a main break, our pressures are so high that it creates a siphoning effect and we have to do a citywide boil water. And you know, that really freaks people out for good reason. And also, you know, creates a you know, pretty big issue around town. People start to wonder what's going on. So that pressure reducing valve system has been something that has needed to be in place for quite some time. It's identified in the master plans, and we do have a design on that. We just need to work on property acquisition and are working on that. We think we're going to get a dedication of property from the Kerr development there on the kind of in the middle of town across from Bimart there, that old lot that you've probably seen getting cleaned up because they're going to do a industrial development there. And then we're also working with one of the apartment complexes is the other ideal place. So it kind of creates kind of partitions the system off so it's in different sections. Is the easy way to think about it, but really it just reduces pressures. So. Let's see. We'll also be replacing an intake pump. We have a water intake pump. We have 3 water intake pumps. You can run 2 at a time. 2 of those are, we'll just call them big. One of those is medium. The interesting part is that you can only run the medium pump by itself because the big pumps create a water wall in the pipe if you're running them both. And so that little pump doesn't have enough pressure to get into that water flow from the big pump. And that smaller pump doesn't have enough pressure to keep, you need velocity in the water to keep the solids suspended so that when it gets into the plant that it's able to treat them appropriately. So really we can only run that with another pump, but it's ineffective with another pump. Long story short, I'm not sure what the idea or thinking was. That's well before any of our time that was there. So I don't even know who to point the finger at, but that pump will be getting replaced. So we'll have 3 effective pumps, which creates redundancy in your system and makes it far more reliable. Should one pump go out, you're good. Should 2 go out, you're still good. So And the last portion of that is ASR feasibility grants. That is aquifer storage and recovery. Basically, we have a single source of water in Molalla, the Molalla River. And there's not a lot of other source options available to us. Even if we were able to have a producing well, to get the water rights to that would just be nearly impossible today. So we could potentially buy other water rights or do those sorts of things, but there's a newish kind of system out there where you basically take your excess water during the winter when you're at high flows and you put it into a well. And that well becomes an aquifer storage and recovery system, and you can draw back out 90% of what you put in. So during the winter, we have 1.2 million roughly gallons a day that folks use, but we've got like 4.2 million gallons a day in water rights. So that's, roughly 2 to 3 million gallons of water per day that we could be pumping in that ASR. It also is really, really good for the groundwater table. It restores that groundwater table, so it's very environmentally friendly as well. So it's kind of, again, a double whammy. And so we applied for a grant as well as another grant that provides the match for that. So I just found out that we moved on to the next stage for both of those, so that's promising. The water SDC improvement and water SDC reimbursement, both of those are set there in case we didn't get one of the grants, that we would have the match that we needed for the grant that we did get. So if we get both grants, that money will probably come back and we'll ask the council, can we use it on this water project or that water project, to be identified at that time. But right now, it's just sitting there for a grant match in case we don't get one of the two. We have the appropriate match funds that are required. So. Okay, that concludes water. Anyone have questions on water? Oh, I'm gonna share one more thing with you guys on water. Actually, sorry. So everyone here has heard of PFAS, right? Okay, so these are these long-term chemicals, these plastics basically, and other stuff that have somehow gotten into our water over the last 20, 50 years. They call them forever chemicals. So Molalla has had, we've tested for that regularly, mostly because we had all the fires upstream, and we come to find out that the fire chemicals were one of the big causes of that. We've consistently and regularly tested for that. There's a list of about 25-ish chemicals on there. Yeah, about 25 chemicals on the list. We've not had a hit on any of them except for one chemical one time, and I can't even pronounce it, but it was 11 parts per trillion. It's not a major concern, but what that did was allow us to apply for grant funding, and we were awarded the grant pretty much out of hand, in order to look at, to basically study what we can do to treat for PFAS in our water system. It also allowed us to join 2 lawsuits against 3M and another large company that is slipping my mind right now, in a class action lawsuit. And there's a settlement that's coming from that, and we've already been told that we're being awarded funding from the settlement. We haven't told us how much, though, yet, have they? It's weird. Anyway, they've said you're awarded, but not how much. So we don't know if it's $7 or $700,000, but we expect that it'll be some reasonable amount, and that we can use that to start the design process on a PFAS treatment system so that we're prepared for what may come. But again, I want to stress that of all the testing we've done, which is a lot, we've had one hit on one chemical at 11 parts per trillion, and nothing since, and nothing before. So I don't want to create panic. I just want to let you guys know we're preparing and doing what we need to do to deal with that should it come down the pipe.
All right.
Being proactive.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Finding those opportunities to have it paid for by others. So that really does conclude water. And then the next one we have is storm on page 127. And your budget starts on page 130. So this is pretty straightforward. All the funding in this is aimed at completing the Stormwater Master Plan update and conducting an SDC and rate study when we're done, which is what you've got to do when you update a master plan. So it's pretty straightforward. We had a very archaic stormwater plan that really didn't even account for a big chunk of the city because that chunk of the city wasn't the city when the plan was written. So it wasn't a very reliable plan. We couldn't even model off of it, which modeling is how what you do. You look at how the water flows and what size the pipes are and that sort of thing. And you try to model where you're going to have issues. We couldn't even model because we had no information. So this was kind of a substantial master planning process, almost a from scratch type of master plan process where we had to go out and survey lines, get depths, do all those things. So it was a little bit more costly than you'll see with most of your master plan updates because they're building off of the last plan, where this one had to start brand new with like 55 to 60% of the city, which is a good thing because we went out and verified that what we were building off is reality. So that's actually a good thing in that regard as far as the plan and the reliability of it. But at the end of the day, we're completing that this fiscal year, and then we'll conduct an SDC and rate study and move forward with some storm projects, but not this year because we don't have any money budgeted for those because we don't know what they are yet. So, any questions on storm? Okay. And so the last one is SDCs, and that's just, if you flip to your next page, 134 starts the SDC funds. So all of your infrastructure systems have a system development charge fund. Water, sewer, storm, parks and streets. Parks only has an improvement fee, and it's only charged to residential development because the idea is that commercial and industrial development doesn't impact parks. People don't come to work to go to the park, right? So that's kind of the idea behind that. System development charges are a one-time charge for new development. The purpose of them is for that new development to pay you guys back for its costs, for its impact on your system. So the folks here that already were here, already live here, work here, whatever case may be, own business here, have already paid their portion for the system, right? And so when someone comes in and says, hey, you had a system that can handle this much and I'm going to use this much of it, the idea is that they would pay this community back for that. The other thing is that what they would do is say, okay, that's now this much closer to not being big enough at all. So we have to look at expanding that pipe, right? And so a small proportionate amount of that is also included. That's the improvement and the reimbursement charge. SDCs can only be spent on capital projects in the system from which they were gotten. Reimbursement fees can be spent on any capital project in that system. Improvement fees can only be spent on capacity increasing projects. So if you are replacing a 6-inch main with a 12-inch main, the difference in the capacity of that pipe is SDC chargeable because it's increasing the capacity, but that first 6 inches is not, right? So it's not a straight across, it's not 50-50, but let's pretend it is because, pipes are round, and so as you add an inch, it's a lot more than the inch inside. But just pretending that it's, 6 inches carries half of what 12 does, even though it's more like 3.75 times what it does. But if you said it carries half of that, then it would say, okay, half the cost of that is SDC eligible. That goes into a 5-year capital plan. You take all the numbers, right? How much of this is improvement eligible, divide it by your growth curve, and that spits you out a number that basically says, hey, your SDC on this rate on this system should be this for the next 5 years. That's a gross simplification, but that's really how it works. There's a lot of transparency required, so what we spend SDCs on is posted on the engineering section webpage for the prior year. Our methodology has to be posted on the website, and so does our capital plan, and all of those are there together. But at the end of the day, you guys have already heard about SDCs. That was those lines where I said this one is, well, for instance, storm we just did, storm SDC improvement. So that's the improvement portion. So we're able to use that on the master plan because it's capacity increasing because it is adding a big chunk of the city, right? So that's kind of the idea behind SDCs, but you guys are already familiar with how they're being spent because they don't get spent out of their fund. They get transferred into the fund for the system from which they were gotten. So street SDCs get transferred into the street fund and then spent from there. So you guys have already seen those expenditures in there. I can go over them if you'd like, but it's just a repeat of what you've seen in all those SDC lines in those individual funds. But if anyone has any more questions about SDCs, I can talk for days about them. Counselor Childress knows that.
You said 15 minutes, so we're not going to days, right?
It's been 22.
Counselor Childress literally calculated an SDC at our training, and I have never been more proud.
Good job. Any questions about the SDCs?
Okay, if you think of any, I'm Matt Corthell. I'm the Community Development Director and Assistant City Manager. Shoot me an email, and I'd love to answer it for you.
You'll be here all week.
I will be here all week. Yes,
Is that
sir.
all your funds?
That is all of
I
them.
thought you said 17. I had a list of 17.
No, I said 13.
Oh, 13.
But
okay.
I
And we ended
merged
at
the
8.
SDCs into
Good
one.
job. Nice work. All right.
You want to take a break?
Yes,
All right. Shall we adjourn for a
recess.
I'm sorry, not adjourn. Recess for a 10-minute break? Is that enough time? Okay.
All right.
All right, we are recessed for 10 minutes. We'll see you back here at 8:31. 2, 1, ready? We're good, okay. All right, so I believe that concludes our department reports, and we are now in the public comment on the fiscal year budget. This section of the meeting is to listen to public comment on the proposed budget. Citizens are allowed up to 3 minutes to present information relevant to the city, but not listed as an item on the agenda. Prior to speaking, citizens shall complete a comment form and deliver it to the city recorder. Members do not generally engage in dialogue with those making comments, but may refer the issue to the budget officer. Do we have any public comment, either in person or online?
I am not aware, Finance Director. No, ma'am.
Okay. So with that, we will close the public comment section of the budget, of the agenda. Now we'll move on to reviewing and deliberating on the fiscal year budget. This portion of the meeting is set aside for budget committee members to ask any remaining questions of staff and deliberate on the acceptance of the proposed budget. So after hearing all that we've heard tonight, are there additional questions or comments that you have that you want to make at this time?
I have one question for Cindy. You in our book, you brought up the 5-year projections. In your speech, you didn't really talk about that. What are our 5-year projections looking like? And
Well, the 5-year projections, it's part of the GFOA requirement, so you can base it off a lot of different things. If you read in that section, what I do is I kind of critiqued it better this year. I put our audited financials, I put our proposed budget, then I took those numbers, and then I based off of what I thought our property taxes would be, our COLAs, our inflations, just to kind of see what would move ahead. So how I look at that is it is a requirement for the budget award, but I try to make sure it has some value when I look at it. So actually just this year with the audited financials, then I can go back and look at them and say, are my projections in line? Am I where I need to be? And then I can use it as a tool like that.
perfect. Thank you.
City Manager Huff?
Mayor, the other aspect of that is on page 13, in my budget transmittal message, I talk a little bit about statement of position. And that kind of reflects the overall health of the city. And our auditors provide those numbers to us on an annual basis. And the current statement of position that we have is $56,836,018. That's up $4.4 million from last year. So what that means is that in addition to what Cindy said, if you look at that 5-year forecast, we're in a good position right now. We're not overspending. You know, sometimes you get in trouble for underspending too.
Bless you.
And we're not in that position either, but we have worked really hard, and you all are part of it, to be very fiscally sound for this community, and it shows in the numbers that we have.
Perfect.
And I think one more thing I could say about that is if you go to page 53 on those consolidated schedules, those are from the audited financials. So these are real numbers. So on page 53, this is the entire city, and it can show you how your beginning fund balances are growing. And then when you flip the page and you look at page 54 and 55, on the left side's the revenue, and then on the right side's the expenditures. So you can see we are taking in more than we are spending. So if you look at this page like this and you compare them, you can see, and these are, like I said, these are audited financials. This is true actual numbers.
Okay. Thank you for that. Both.
Any other questions or comments? Yes.
I'll
Counselor
say again, what a fine job I believe that Cindy has done with the finances of this city. What you've done in the last 2 or 3 years with upgrading the budget presentation, making it conducive for online use, and linking, and and everything has been quite impressive, and I always get excited when it's budget time, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I
Questions?
just would echo the same thing. Even a layperson like myself can look at this and understand what's going on. It's great.
That's nice. I try to make it as user-friendly and have that in mind when we're putting the budget together. I hope that there's a piece that you could take away from it that you'll remember.
Yeah, you do a great job. It's definitely, I enjoy the budget process as well and looking at it. And I also really appreciate how far we've come as a city in looking back not so many years ago when we were facing a much different situation, and how this team and others who have come along over the years have really turned the city around to make us more fiscally sound, I think, maybe in the history of the city, to be honest. So I would say well done. Anybody else? Okay. So at this time, the Budget Committee needs to make a decision on whether to continue the meeting tomorrow evening or to move forward with a motion to recommend its adoption to City Council. So forwarding this to City Council for them to review and approve ultimately, hopefully. So,
Madam Chair,
yes, sir.
I move to approve the proposed budget for fiscal year 2025, 2026 as recommended and recommend adoption to City Council.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right. By show of hands, all in favor? Any opposed? All right, looks like the motion carries unanimously.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve ad valorem property taxes to be certified for collection at the rate of 5.3058 per 1,000 of addressed value for permanent rate tax, and in the amount of $805,812 for debt service on general obligation bonds.
Second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. All those in favor, please show by raise of hand. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously and passes. All right, so at this point, it looks like we've completed the budget process for the general budget, so we will not be doing a continuation tomorrow evening, if I'm understanding correctly, or Thursday. Is tomorrow Thursday? I'm sorry,
Yep.
it is Thursday. Yes, thank you. So we would entertain a motion to adjourn the Molalla Budget Committee meeting at 8:40.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to reset or adjourn this Budget Committee meeting.
All right, do we have a second?
Second that.
We have a second. Any discussion?
It's a non-debatable.
All those in favor, please show your hand for aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously and passes. And that concludes our Budget Committee meeting. Do we have a MURA meeting we need to go into next? Okay.
Do you need a separation?
Thank you, everyone, for
Christie, do you need a
an
separation
efficient
of video?
process.
Guys, do we need 5 minutes? Are we ready to go?
Thank you.
Appreciate all your guys' work.
Thank you so much.
We'll stay here and finish the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't worry about us.
We'll get the
Drive-
hard stuff down
Drive
now,
safely.
Matt.
2, 1,
Go.
go.
Okay, I want to call the Molalla Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee meeting for fiscal year 2025-2026. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for being here. I think in dispensing of the flag salute again for this meeting is okay, unless there's a disagreement with that. I'm going to start with roll call, and I'll start with you, Char.
Agency member Penny.
Agency member Bartholomew. Agency member Vermillion present.
Agency member Trefethen present.
Agency member Kaiser present.
Agency member Klein present.
Agency member Kleisig present.
Agency member Sheaves present.
Agent member Gilmer present.
Agency member Childress present.
Agency member Williams present.
City Recorder Christy Teets present.
Finance Director Cindy Chauran present.
And I am the Agency Director and Budget Officer, Dan Huff. And the first order of business is the election of a chair. Do I have a motion to elect a chair for the committee?
Mr. Huff, I move to appoint Agency Member Klein as Agency Budget Committee Chair.
Second that.
Agency Member Vermillion provided a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay. Ms. Klein, you are the chair of the 2025-26 Molalla Urban Renewal District Budget Committee.
That is easy for you to say. Thank you. All right, at this point, we need to consider a motion to elect an agency budget committee vice chair.
We need
Do
a
I have
buddy?
a motion? I do need a buddy.
I move to appoint agency member Kaiser as the agency budget committee vice chair.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Our next order of business is the consent agenda, which includes the Budget Committee meeting minutes from May 15th, 2024. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee meeting minutes for May 15th, 2024, as presented.
Second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. Unanimous. All right. I did jump over a section 3, Christy, and I'm just going to come back to it for a second, where it talked about presentations, proclamations, and ceremonies. We didn't have anything related to that other than our elections, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we now will accept a presentation of the budget message for the fiscal year 2025-2026 for the Molalla Urban Renewal Agency. And that would be you,
Thank you, Chair Klein.
Mr. Huff.
If you all turn to page 144 in your budget documents, there's a short budget message and the financial components of the Urban Renewal District are on 145 and 146. It's a short version this year, and I will tell you, you can see that there's one project that we're reserving funds for this next current fiscal year, and that is for funding that we potentially may need to complete the police facility. Okay? We don't know what that final number is. You never really know on a project like this. As you heard before, that project is on time, and it's actually probably under budget, but we won't really know that for some time. So the direction that I provided Cindy was every dollar we have available in the Urban Renewal District needs to be budgeted for the police facility. My hope is we won't need it. And, but other than that, and you'll see in there that we have $4,030,000 identified out of the Urban Renewal District to go towards the police facility. our urban renewal district, if we weren't building a very expensive police facility, is actually doing pretty well right now. And you can see at the end, I did have a mistake on this one. I said, and Leota found it, of all people. So I didn't change the 2024-25 budget to 25-26. So, but if you look on the couple of sentences above there, that this current year we're receiving $1,041,743 in revenue out of the urban renewal district, and that's an increase of $121,000. So we are bringing in more money each year. Some of the development that's happening in town is contributing to that. So we expect more next year, but we haven't reached next year yet, so we don't know for sure. But that's really the presentation of the urban renewal district for next fiscal year. It's not all that exciting, but on the other hand, it is exciting. So if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. I can't even go through a 10 or 15 minute explanation of how those funds are created if you'd like.
Okay, Mac. We fell for that earlier.
He got a lot more time than I got.
Any questions, or does anybody want a rundown on Euro money? All right.
Dang.
Going once,
No
going
takers.
twice.
No
Look at you.
takers.
All right, well, thank you for covering that. It's nice to see it's very straightforward, and if we don't use it, hopefully we will be able to use it for something else down the road, so.
Yes.
That is very exciting. With that, we'll move on to the next part of our agenda, which is a public comment on fiscal year budget. And once again, I'll read this. The section of the meeting is to listen to public comment on the proposed budget. Citizens are allowed up to 3 minutes to present information relative to the city, but not listed as an item on the agenda. Prior to speaking, citizens shall complete a comment form and deliver it to the city recorder. Members do not generally engage in dialogue with those making comments, but may refer the issue to the agency officer. Chrissy or anybody, do we know if we have any public comment that's come in either in person here or online?
None for this evening, ma'am.
Okay, great. With that, we will close the public comment on this fiscal year budget. Next up, we will review and deliberate on the fiscal year budget. This portion of the meeting is set aside for agency budget committee members to ask any remaining questions of staff and deliberate on the acceptance of the proposed budget. So you have one more opportunity to ask some questions, make some comments. All right, hearing none. We are at a good point in time where the MURA Budget Committee needs to decide on whether to continue the meeting tomorrow, or would you like to move forward with a motion to recommend the adoption of the Urban Renewal Agency 2025-26 fiscal year budget?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the proposed budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 and recommend adoption to the Molalla Urban Renewal Agency.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand and as aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. It passes. All right, since we are not moving forward with another meeting night, may I have a motion? Oh, wait,
One more.
one more motion. Oh, we have to read it twice. May I have a motion to approve the proposed budget and recommend its adoption to the Urban Renewal Agency, please?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the levying property taxes for the maximum amount of revenue that may be raised by dividing the taxes under Section 1C, Article 11. Sorry, my Greek numerals aren't good. Article 11 of the Oregon Constitution and ORS Chapter 457.
Second that?
All right, we have a motion and we have a second to approve the property taxes. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, raise your hand, signifying aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Well, we are at that famous time where I don't know if there are any objections, but we will, I guess we don't need a motion to adjourn. We can adjourn this meeting without any further ado. So unless there are some objections to that, do I get to do this?
You do.
Nope.
Yeah.
Meeting adjourned.
Yeah.
Right.
Well done, everybody.
Thank you. All before 9 o'clock still.